more love, more joy, everything.
It's inspired young people.
Inspiration comes from within you. When you clear out the garbage that's in your mind, you then create space for something better, more beautiful to come in.
Let's have life and have it more abundantly.
I say yes.
It's like taking a workshop. I get to be in my pajamas.
We have a very active imagination, which is why it's important to learn how to harness it and then point it in the direction you want to go.
I listen to your show every day.
It's time now for Living Your Inspired Life with Susan Burrell. Susan is no-nonsense, inspirational, motivational, and fun.
This is positive talk radio.
Practical wisdom for everyday life.
It's a gift you give yourself.
Now, here's Susan.
And welcome to Living Your Inspired Life. You're listening to News Talk 1590 KVTA. And before we get started, I just want to remind everybody of some of the amazing conversations that we've been having with people. Last week we had a conversation with journalist and international crime buster in some ways, Sally Armstrong, and we talked about her book Uprising. If you haven't heard that show, I invite you to go and listen. It's chock full of news and information and for me, inspiration. So go to livingyourinspiredlife.org where you can tune in, tune up, and develop your power perspective on life. So with that said, today I have another dynamic woman joining me. This woman I met over 10 years ago, and she was starting a new venture, and I was profoundly taken by the courage that this woman exhibits in wanting to promote world peace. And the new venture she was beginning was something called Training Across Borders. So I want to welcome Jamie Zimron, who is an Aikido Sensei. Jamie, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Susan. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I got chills going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down to talk about this idea that you helped to begin 10 years ago, and now there's another iteration of it happening in October. And so let's talk a little bit about Training Across Borders, and then I want you to educate the listeners on Aikido and really what that is. Or should we do it the other way around? I don't know.
Well, maybe we'll start with Aikido.
Okay, let's start with Aikido.
Which I know you know about.
Yeah, I know Aikido from when my son, 11 years ago, got involved in a brand new Aikido group up in Ojai where we were living. And I was just so enamored with it because it's a martial arts. I'm going to talk about it from my POV, the mom. It's a martial arts training. But at the core of it is this idea of harmony or unifying with the life energy. And to me, it was all about developing harmony and peace so that you're not learning a martial art so you can harm somebody else. You're learning a martial art so you can kind of do conflict resolution. That's how I saw it when the boys were practicing for this few years that they were doing it. Am I right on with that, or am I?
You are definitely on with it and in the direction of it. You'll actually love it, what Aikido means. It's made up of 3 kanji, or characters in Japanese, AI, which means love. So what's love? Love is the harmony you mentioned, harmony, unity, oneness, coordination, synchronicity, integration, unity, coming together. So that's the I in Aikido. Ki is life energy, chi in Chinese, ki in the Japanese. And life energy is what every one of us is made of, what everything on the planet and the universe is made of. It couldn't be otherwise. And it's really all the same, regardless of what size body or color skin or religion or nationality. It really doesn't matter. It's this universal life energy that is shared by every living creature. And that's the key. And Do is pronounced Dao, T-A-O. Some people are more familiar with it in the Chinese. Do in Japanese, and it means the way with a capital W. So Aikido really means this way of harmonizing, becoming one with, in a loving spirit and mindset, with this life energy of the universe that we all share.
Yeah. I love it.
So what does that mean? I mean, when we think of martial arts, most people think of combat. They think of fighting, self-defense, And
Yeah, I'm
many
thinking of
martial arts-
I'm thinking of The Last Samurai, Jamie.
Right,
You know, that just
exactly,
is, like sums it up, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there are a lot of impressions and things about martial arts. But in general, when we think martial arts, we think, oh, these people kind of over there who do this sort of combative thing, or they put on these white, funny clothes and they go to a special place and they practice hitting each other and sparring and defending themselves and that sort of thing. And it usually ends up with, I'm okay, you're not. Right? You tried to make me not okay, and so then I fought back and defended myself, and maybe you're okay, maybe you're not, but at least I am. And, you know, there's usually a winner or a loser, and there's competition and that sort of thing. So the founder of Aikido, his name was Morihei Ueshiba Sensei, and he died at age 86 in 1969. That means he was really at his height of his life and his martial arts prowess and powers during the 1900s, and actually sort of the era of fascist Japan, World War I, World War II Japan. He was only about 5 feet tall, and he was known as the greatest martial artist in all of Japan, undefeatable.
Wow.
And people started hearing about this little guy who could throw you without touching you, and did all of these amazing feats. He dodged bullets as a foot soldier in Manchuria during the First World War. Like, how do you do these things? So he was actually a very spiritual man, practiced Shinto, sort of naturalistic Japanese religion. And so here he was, undefeatable, a great martial artist. He could be okay. Didn't, you know, other people got hurt. And he wasn't really satisfied with that as the ultimate kind of expression of martial arts or self-defense. And so the stories go that he prayed, and he had an enlightenment experience in the garden one day where he saw light and tears streamed down his face, and he summed up his enlightenment in a very short phrase, a sentence that said, "True Budo, the warrior way," Bu means the warrior, "true Budo is I love." So the essence of the warrior way is love.
Wow.
And it was really a wow, and he began to modify art, martial techniques from jujitsu, aikijitsu, all the different arts that he had become a master of, a sword, and in the modifications he made, where in a particular technique you might break somebody's arm, he said, you don't have to go against the elbow and break the arm. That goes against the harmony of the universe. That's not the way the body's built. So we could actually bend the arm at the wrist, because there's a joint, and at the elbow there's a joint, and that connects to the shoulder, and that connects to the whole body. And so we could actually take the person down, follow the bends of those joints, reach the whole body, use our ki, our energy, because the energy inside of me is the same inside of the other person. If we could relate at that energetic level and work with the way the body actually moves, we could take them down, we could neutralize the aggression and the problem without having to hurt them, and then try to find out what's the matter and solve things in a better way. He would also use his breath power.
What does that mean,
have,
breath power?
That's a good question. Kukyu, Kokyu, Kukyu is the Japanese, and everything is made of breath, of life. In fact, even in Hebrew, the word for breath and wind and spirit is all the same word, ruach. So it's like Kukyu, this breath power. And our energy flows through our bodies through breath. When we get tight and tense and rigid and defensive and angry and in a harming state of mind, we block that flow of breath and of energy. So he taught how to use your body properly, your belly, your center, your legs, your feet, and to flow your breath and your energy through your body to have an incoming attack be related to not as an attack, but as just a flow of energy. Join with that flow, join with that breath, and then be able to, in that harmonious joining, actually be able to lead the attacker, the attack, in such a way down to the ground or whatever to neutralize that, and almost using breath power, not brute muscle force. And it would turn out that, like, I'm okay, and let's see if you can be okay too.
When I was researching it for our conversation today, I came across several quotes by O Sensei, and one of them is that he said, to injure an opponent is to injure yourself. To control aggression without inflicting injury is the art of peace.
Yes, beautiful. There's so many great quotes, and those are some of my favorites. Yeah, he said things like true victory is self-victory. There is no enemy out there except the mind of discord within.
Oh, wait, say that again. There's no enemy out there except...
For the mind of discord within.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
He would say things like, the attacker is defeated at the start, or they have broken the harmony of the universe just by in the act of attacking. And he understood that somebody who attacks there is troubled. Nobody attacks, and we don't fight unless there's something wrong, something the matter, something bothering us. So if we could actually, rather than fear or respond with anger against that attack or attacker, to begin to just see it as an energy and know in our centered state that's connected to the power of the universe, we could utilize that, and then we could take that energy and move with it, and ultimately, again, nobody has to be harmed, but we would be able to restore harmony. We would be able to take care of whatever was really causing that problem. And ultimately, Aikido becomes very transformative. So where we may have started and as enemies, we can become, ultimately even friends. But at least we can find a way to move together for some mutual kind of resolution and that's nonviolent.
So the thing that is fascinating to me about all of this is what you just said about the movement of it to the flow of the energy and moving with that flow of energy to create and restore harmony. And that's part of what's happening now with training across borders. That program that you joined with and started a little over 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the idea of training across borders was to bring the philosophy and the practice of Aikido to places in the Middle East that were in that place of conflict.
Exactly. Just a little background. I actually started training when I was a student at Stanford. So nearly 40 years ago, I started practicing Aikido and actually opened my own martial arts school. It was originally called the Women's Martial Arts School, then the Aikido Art Center of San Francisco. So I've been training and teaching for a very long time. I've been blessed to have fantastic teachers and to teach myself. In 1987, I had an opportunity with one of my senseis, one of my instructors, to be some of the first foreign martial artists and the first Aikidoists to journey to the Soviet Union.
Wow.
When Gorbachev had come in and was opening things up in Russia and perestroika, restructuring, and we went to Russia to do Aikido. This was at a time when it was still the Cold War, and the Americans and the Soviets had very little contact, were still in conflict, and really had no way to meet one another and to maybe break through some of the stereotypes and the fears or this idea that you're my enemy. No, you're my enemy. And so we went with this Art of Peace in 1987 for 2 weeks and met some people, found people who were interested and very much kind of beginning to train in Aikido. Martial arts had actually been outlawed under communism, so that was part of the opening up. And it was just an unbelievable experience in a matter of moments, minutes, hours, to suddenly become friends with people who had been these distant, unknown, strange enemies. And for both the Americans and the Russians, it was a very powerful experience. And Aikido is very powerful as a vehicle to connect, because when we get on the mat together, we actually have a strike or a grab. we physically are interacting and engaging, touching each other. And then we make a harmonious joining movement. We don't sort of bat it away and then hit you back. We find a way to blend, and we work at that level of my kokyu, my breath, my life energy, my ki, and yours. And we connect at that level. And then we make these harmonious blending movements. They turn out to be very beautiful. They're almost ballet-like.
Oh, they are. I mean, having watched the boys, it becomes a dance, a very elegant dance.
Exactly. I mean, it really is. Some people think we're just cooperating, but a really cool thing in this transformative moment, and an attack comes in when you blend. We use the word blend. We blend, we join, we harmonize with it. The attack disappears in the blend. I mean, if you attack and you go bam against it, you know what happened. If you attack and there's a yield and a join and a blend and a lead, and we're sort of dancing, it looks like we're just being nice and cooperating. But what we're doing is transforming that conflictual moment, and it's very transformative. people who do Aikido end up having a lot of fun, and they love to roll around and throw each other around and throw me around, I'll throw you around. But what's really cool in Aikido, and I saw that in 1987, 89, 91, I led some groups of my own to Russia and to continue this introduction of Aikido there. What I saw was that we were actually talking about the nature of power, the nature of conflict, a conflictual response, a nonviolent response, transformative responses, how we could engage in it. It was very captivating, and we developed such bonds. People who do Aikido really get connected. All the sports for peace activities are really wonderful and really powerful, but a lot of times it's like my team and your team, my country and your country.
Right, very competitive.
It can be competitive. And in Aikido, we're actually addressing these very issues. You're my enemy. You attacked me. How am I going to respond to you? And how could I respond to you differently than the way we ordinarily respond and are conditioned to responding in this world of ours? And people have fun. They have a great time. So that's really what we did in the Soviet Union. Now, I started going to Israel when I was a teenager, and I started to teach and train in Israel in the early 90s, soon after this period in Russia. And at that time, in the mid-90s, there were peace accords signed between the Oslo Peace Accords, the Palestinians and the Israelis. And at that time, I had some of my first opportunities as a Jewish person and a dual citizen of Israel to go to the West Bank to meet Palestinians. I went to Gaza at the time. And it was like we were meeting as, for the first time. Here we were enemies, right? Mortal enemies. And we were meeting each other as human beings. And that meeting was through the auspices of an organization I'm still on the advisory board of called the Middle East Compassionate Listening Project. And we went to really listen to each other and hear each other's stories and understand each other. It was a very life-changing experiences for me. And during those trips, I would ask if I could have an hour to do some Aikido, some actually sort of physical, somatic conversation beyond the verbal. We would actually physically interact and study attack and study a peaceful Aikido way of responding to it, nonviolent conflict resolution in a physical way. And those were always wonderful times and really impactful. In fact, I remember one evening in the West Bank sitting with a group of Palestinians, many of whom had been in jail, before, and they actually asked me, this woman, right, this Jewish woman, this American woman, they asked me, how would you consider conducting our national liberation struggle from this Aikido point of view?
Wow.
It was wow. It
Yeah.
was really wow. I was kind of speechless. I was like, I wish I could really have a great answer for you, but let's explore it. Now, the fact that we were beginning to explore that question and to think there might be some other ways that work better than all of the violence on both sides. There's just tremendous violence on both sides of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and of every war, of every conflict. And so to consider that question and to see these people really wanting to explore that and think about it and discuss it and potentially create some new ways to handle the conflict going on and to achieve national liberation and to achieve their aspirations was so powerful. And so I thought back to the Soviet Union, and I was like, wow, we've got to do something with Aikido. And also because Sensei himself, as you've made some wonderful references to quotes of his, he said that Aikido is to reconcile the world. It is not a technique to fight with or defeat an enemy. It is a way to reconcile the world and to make all human beings one family.
Oh, I love that.
And he even said, he went so far as in a haiku to say, rely on peace to activate your manifold powers. So
that's completely opposite from how the world functions right now.
Oh, it's completely opposite. And it seems kind of counterintuitive if we let go of brute force, and if we let go of opposition and duality, and we let go of all our fear and anger, and if we let go of that and we go to a new place and we find a way to harmonize, to understand, to take in the other, to be understood ourselves, and find new ways that we can move and flow together, that this would actually bring us powerful results. It wouldn't be something weak and something, we're just being nice. No, this would actually be powerful and effective. And that's what we get to experience on the mat when we do Aikido. This isn't just being nice. This stuff's really powerful.
It is transformative. And I would imagine if you've got, as you were just sharing about being with the Palestinian and the Israeli group, and I would imagine that the actual physical interaction, because, all right, so I'll just talk about it from my POV, Jamie. When I get angry, I want to hit somebody, you know, and that energy, that anger energy, then to use it in a way, or to find a way that it can be transmuted so that I'm no longer wanting to hurt someone, which ultimately hurts me, but I can change it in a I'm losing my words here, but in a physical way, so that it transmutes physically. Then we can have the conversation. If you're trying to have a conversation when you're still angry and you just want to put your fist through someone, there won't be a resolution until you frame that energy, right?
Well, exactly. And it's not to say that we don't get angry, we don't get afraid, we don't have all kinds of reasons to be really angry and to want revenge at times and to want to really strike back and hurt back. No one is saying that we're going to pretend that those feelings don't come up and that they're not even justified, because that's part of our life. It's just saying, you know what, in a practical way, that's not really working, because we end up hurting ourselves often. We could hurt the other, and we hurt ourselves. Maybe I'm okay, but you're not. And if you're not, you're going to come back and get me the way I just came back to get you. And
right,
it's just going to escalate.
It goes on and on and on.
It goes on, and that's what we see, going on and on and on. And the world has not evolved very far. I mean, we can take you go back a few thousand years and go back to today. We have much more sophisticated weapons of destruction, but it's almost worse than the way, cavemen fought, bare arms or whatever. We have all kinds of cool technology. There's been a lot of development and evolution and civilization and humanity. But to be quite honest, wars are raging all over the planet, and violence is not working. And whether it's insurgent violence or sort of institutionalized military violence, it's just reaction. And what happens? More death, more destruction, more killing, more maiming, and more hatred, more scars, more trauma. And that's really what we're looking at in a real way. This is what's going on in our world. Can't we do better? And Sensei, once again, I have to go back to being amazed by him and his enlightenment during the historical setting he was in, Japan during fascism, World War I, World War II, Japan. And he says, no, the way of the warrior, the samurai way, is love, is harmony, loving protection of all life. And he was really concerned about all these issues we're talking about. He said that Aikido is actually medicine for a sick world.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I get that. I have another quote from him, too, that kind of speaks to this as well, where he said, if your heart is large enough to envelop your adversaries, you can see right through them and avoid their attacks. And once you envelop them, you will be able to guide them along the path indicated to you by heaven and earth, which is a very grounded, to me, way of handling things. It's not. It is about unifying and not separation.
It really is. I mean, if you think about it in a conversation, if somebody's really opposing you, or your kid is just going nuts and really wants something, and instead of just yelling back at them and forcing them and saying no and whatever, you actually listen. You take it in. Maybe you even agree a little bit. You get, which would be some love, some blend, and all of a sudden, there's quiet, there's willingness, there's, okay, well, let's see. And it's amazing. Most of us don't expect that kind of acceptance, that kind of validation, that kind of what we could call love.
Yeah.
And when we get it, we just go, oh, really? It's very disarming. It's disarming in a conversation. It's disarming in an argument. And it's really disarming. And when we discover how powerful that is, and all of a sudden, the kinds of cooperations, the connections, the new creative, transformative solutions that can emerge become possible. And it seems kind of like magic. I mean, people do Aikido and they're like, wow, that was amazing. That's like magic. What happened?
Yeah.
And it's like that, and I mean, I ultimately, I guess, believe in the good in people, that we all want to live. We all would much rather have a good time and connect and have fun and be friends than not. And that we could work things out when we can be in that place. But we have to be first willing to go to that place. So Sensei and the practice of Aikido are about, could I find the ways to be like that? And it's not just an abstract mental idea. It's not even a religious or spiritual practice. It's going, wow, I get in my belly and my center. I connect to my legs and my feet. I connect to the earth. I breathe. I move in a harmonious way, sequential way within my own body. I have this whole other mindset, and I'm willing to investigate these movements, and I discover power that I never knew was there. And once I discovered, it's like, wow, that's kind of obvious. I think I'm a professional golfer.
Yes, I did. We haven't talked about that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not, it's like, well, what does Aikido have to do with golf? And I've created Ki Golf. Well, to put it very succinctly, it's pretty common knowledge that most golfers try to kill the ball. Right? It's a little white ball. They want to move it where they want it to go, and they grip the club tight, and they tense up their arms and their biceps, and they go, wow, wow, and they try to hit it hard. And there's an idea that if you hit it hard, it's going to go far and go where you want it to go. And the truth is, when you try to kill the ball, you die. You don't get a very good shot, and that doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, most people just sort of redouble it and they try to kill it harder, and it just doesn't work. So it's like, could we let go of all that brute force and tension and opposition to this tiny little white golf ball? I mean, it seems silly when you think about it in golf, but it's true. And so when we get centered and grounded and balanced and relax and breathe and move in a sequential flowing harmony, and then, that moves right through the golf ball, your golf ball loves you. It flies. It's a beautiful thing, and you feel good, and you didn't hurt yourself, and and you didn't give yourself some negative self-talk. Oh, you idiot, you jerk. You weren't violent to yourself after you just tried to kill the ball and had bad results. So, you look at something like golf, and you go, this is starting to make a little sense. This isn't some airy-fairy flowery thing. And it shows up everywhere in everything we do. I mean, you can ride a horse. If you're tense and just kicking the horse and mad at the horse, doesn't like you a whole lot. There's a way to sit on a horse and move in harmony and flow, and the two of you are having a beautiful time together. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of love generated. So, again, it pretty much shows up everywhere.
Jamie, I love this idea of how you can move Aikido into all areas of your life, whether you're interacting with another sport or a child. And it does have profound benefits when people are focusing on how the energy can be utilized to move it into a peaceful resolution as opposed to a conflictive thing.
Well, exactly, and get back really to what we want to talk about, the training across borders. We've given a lot of background, but again, I began to see that we could potentially use Aikido as a vehicle, even between Palestinians and Israelis, this long-standing, deep, bitter, painful, deadly conflict, and in other conflict areas, other conflict zones, that it has universal application. And when I was in Israel in the 90s, and people were practicing Aikido, and I actually heard that Queen Noor in Jordan had brought an Aikido sensei to Jordan to teach for 3 years.
Wow.
And there was a peace treaty signed in 1994 between Israel and Jordan, and I sort of had this salam shalom, which means peace in both Arabic and Hebrew, dream. Could we create a dojo or an event or a conference or something where we could actually get together and train together? Well, a lot of things happened during that next decade, starting with the Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin, who had extended his hand as Yasser Arafat had to sign the Oslo Peace Accords. Well, he was assassinated, and then there was a lot of violence in the next decade. And by 2004, 3 or 4, I was living back in the States, and a man named Don Levine, Professor Don Levine, who was a University of Chicago professor of sociology and also a world-renowned scholar, he founded an organization in 1998 called Aiki Extension, professionals in Aikido and in law, medicine, education, business, psychology, all kinds of fields, professional golf, as it happened, professional sports, but professionals in Aikido and in their professions extending these universal principles into their work.
Wow.
And so it's a nonprofit, a 501c3. And he's also Jewish, as it happens. He passed away, I'm sorry to say, just a few months ago. But he wanted to do some connecting of Palestinians and Israelis through Aikido. And so we talked, and at the end of that conversation, I shared my Salam Shalom dream, and he loved that. He was already going in that direction. And so we created the Middle East Aikido Peace Project. And what really launched it was this seminar we held in 2005, which was the brainchild of Don Sensei and Richard Strozzi Heckler Sensei and another man, Philip Eminger. The three of them had really gotten together and put together something called Training Across Borders, TAB. And so Training Across Borders was a conference that we held in April of 2005 on the island of Cyprus, which is a neutral place where both Arabs and Israelis could geographically get together, and other people in conflict. We had some Serbs and Bosnians, Turks and Greeks themselves who've been fighting for a long time. And we met in what is the UN buffer zone between the Greek and Turkish parts of Cyprus.
Wow.
There was a war there in the early 70s. And the UN buffer zone still exists to keep the peace there. And that's where we met. And it was just a phenomenal leap. It was an experiment. We located varying people, particularly Israelis, Palestinians, who were just beginning to practice Aikido, again, some Serbs and Bosnians, some different people, and who were willing to take this step, who did Aikido, willing to take the step to come and meet each other, get on the mat together, cross borders, and potentially disillusion themselves of the fears and hatreds and stereotypes, and literally reach out their hands to train and practice together and make these harmonizing movements, roll around. We did breakout sessions where we studied leadership and studied PTSD, and a program in the favelas of Brazil with young people transforming the inner city there, all kinds of things. And it was a remarkable 4 or 5 days we spent together in Cyprus, and we refer to it as Cyprus. It was such a watershed experience, and what happened in Cyprus and what has happened since Cyprus.
It sounds to me like the people that showed up for that first conference in Cyprus, well, okay, again, I have to just say it from my point of view, but I think that takes a lot of guts to say, okay, I am going, especially coming from those heavy-duty conflict zones, I am going to step forward and begin to be the broker of peace. That's
exactly the word. I mean, people are very brave. Even people who would be willing to come to something like this, because not every Aikido person was willing. I mean, it takes a special person in the first place to even be interested to come to an Aikido peace-building seminar. Peace isn't even a popular word. It's so dangerous. It means you're a collaborator, or you gave in, or you surrendered. I mean, people just don't really, in some ways, really believe in peace. They think it's something kind of weak. And it can be dangerous. It can actually be dangerous. So for the people who are even willing to come, very, very brave and very possessed of some unique mind, heart, and soul, even as Aikidoists, who want to literally train with enemies, right? Or someone who has been your enemy. An example, there's so many examples of the courage, but Don Levine Sensei had found a group of Aikidoists in Baghdad in a dojo called the Samurai Center in Baghdad. Now, mind you, this was 2004, 2005. This was the height of the Iraq-American War. And, and they were training, and they were really quite fine Aikidoists, had a whole dojo going on, but they were living under, bombs and kidnappings and all kinds of things. Anyways, 6 Iraqis decided they were coming to Training Across Borders. by the way, we've helped them all with financial assistance, many of the people that come, because so many people just don't have the financial means to make a trip like this. So we were able to help support them on a financial level, but, I mean, their guts were profound. They got in a car to drive to Amman, which is they were going to fly out of Jordan to Cyprus, and they planned to spend 2 days with visiting family and friends in Amman before they flew. So they got in the car, they're driving, and they have to cross from Iraq into Syria and then Syria into Jordan.
Wow.
When they got to the Syrian border, the American soldiers stopped them. They had just closed the border, and they told them, listen, guys, if you proceed, you may well not get back home, because we've closed the border. And essentially for the Americans, any Iraqi who went to Syria was going to, return a terrorist or something,
right.
And anyways, they had to decide in that moment, were they going to risk continuing and potentially not even ever getting back home? And they tell the story that, yes, we proceeded. Aikido is our way. And so they drove through Syria, and they had problems at the Jordanian border as well. They ended up getting to the airport like a few hours before their flight, not 2 days.
Wow.
And they got on their flight. When they arrived to Cyprus, this beautiful group of Iraqi men were exhausted. They were so tired. It's like, what happened? And they told us the story. I mean, I was practically in tears. My heart was just like, wow, amazing to hear these men. And I must say, they had so much love and brotherhood between them. I've traveled a lot. I've been with a lot of people. There was more love and connection between those 6 men than I've seen in any other culture, quite honestly. Male or female, any other culture, they blew me away, their level of love and connection. So they proceeded because Aikido is our way. And I must tell you, they suffered consequences. There was a kidnapping afterwards. There was another bomb. They had someone be killed.
Oh, gosh.
And I think no one is still in Baghdad. I know that 2, I think, are in the States. One is in Switzerland. One is in Montreal. One is in Australia. They have all become refugees as a result of the war, and just to live safely. And they had endured quite a few threats from having participated in this peace conference.
Oh,
I
good
just spoke to one of them, a sensei who is living in Canada now, just achieved political asylum. He's not going to make it to our seminar this year, TAB 2015, which is just 3 weeks away. But we had a wonderful conversation, and he said, I miss my brothers. I miss them so much, and we are all over the world now.
I have another quote by Sensei I want to share, Jamie, because it speaks to what you just described, that whole adventure that they went on. Sensei said, loyalty and devotion lead to bravery. Bravery leads to the spirit of self-sacrifice. The spirit of self-sacrifice creates trust in the power of love.
Wow.
And that's what
getting chills now.
I know, I have chills just all over me. And that's what you're describing is their loyalty and devotion to being peacemakers, and then trusting that no matter what, I don't know how you trust when you're in those kind of conflict zones, trusting that if I show up, if I continue on, everything's not going to be okay, but there is that power of love, like you said, when they showed up, and they were the most loving individuals you've ever met. I can't even imagine.
It is hard for us to imagine here in the States as Americans, but these are realities, and I must say it's some of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had have been in doing this work and being together. And I consider that Aikido, I'm very grateful to Aikido as a vehicle that is allowing us to get together and is our reason to get together. And to see the kind of support that people continue to give one another. And we're actually going to have a breakout seminar at our conference in 3 weeks, and we will have several people from places like Jordan, Israel, Palestine, some different countries, Algeria, people living in war zones, living with daily violence and having personally suffered the effects of a lot of the violence from war. And there we're going to do a panel and talk about what's it like to do Aikido. Why would you do Aikido? How do you get to there in your mind and in your practice? And how do you stick with it? It's not popular, and it's so easy, as you talked about earlier. It's so much easier in a way for just to go with our reactions that are a result of our hurt and our anger. How do you get to be following and practicing this way and be devoted to it?
Well, and you mentioned earlier in the previous training across borders that you had a breakout session about post-traumatic stress disorder. Because that right there, how do you even overcome that? And it must be being committed and loyal to this practice, this way.
Yes, it is. And there are quite a few Aikido practitioners, I'm actually amongst them, who are what we call somatic practitioners. Soma means the body in Greek, as it happens, but who really work with somatic practices, body work, massage work, healing work, varying kinds of fitness work, yoga, meditative mind-body practices, and psychotherapeutic, somatic psychotherapeutic work. And so, again, we will have some breakout sessions on that because these are really ways that we can help to manage, minimize, mitigate the effects of post-traumatic stress because it's a very physical thing, stress. And when you're living in an abusive or a violent situation, any one of us, we react in a physical way. It gets into us at a cellular level in our muscles and our tissues and the way we hold ourselves. And the trauma it's registered in the body, it's held in the body, and then it affects us so much. And, how can we work with that so that we can begin to move some of that energy through and have some healing and come back to a healthier, more peaceful way that we can just be in ourselves, much less in relation to others.
Yeah.
So that's all related, and it's no coincidence, I think, that Aikido practitioners very often are also somatic mind-body workers.
Yeah.
And
makes
working
sense
in
to me.
the area of healing. Yeah.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense to me, having witnessed it with my boys and the processes, and it also informed many of them to become compassionate listeners and in a way peaceful warriors. Almost all of my son's friends are walking that path of, how can we resolve a conflict as opposed to let me go and find a fight.
Oh, that's so beautiful. It's so heartening for me to hear. And, when you and I met and I heard that your boys have been practicing since they were kids, and we're going to have a youth track of classes in Athens when we're there in a couple weeks with Training Across Borders. We have many young people training in Aikido. It's such an amazing thing to educate young people and children from a young age in a real physical way and with this mindset, because it's a different mindset. And it requires training. It's not out there in our culture. It's not out there in our conditioning or in the media. It's not what we learn. And kids who go to Aikido schools and have this experience and have this training, they grow up differently and they understand new ways, different ways that they can be powerful, they can be empowered, and they can also handle conflicts. They can also become leaders with a heart, and compassion is a good word. How can we create a new generation of compassionate, wise leaders, and from a young age, and who understand different ways to be powerful, different ways to work with other people, ways to see them not as so different from themselves, and not certainly as enemies or someone to be dominated, but rather someone to work with on the planet. We're all here just together. That's that.
Right.
But we really need to consciously train our children and even ourselves as adults to be different kinds of leaders and to handle things differently and to just be with ourselves in different ways. And it's so true that raising a new generation of sort of harmonious, compassionate peace leaders is absolutely vital. I think probably the biggest challenge we have on the planet is to have better leadership. With better leadership, we'd all do better. I've also seen that the practice is very transformative for adults, and it's really never too late. I certainly know that as an adult, a younger adult, and getting a little older adult, I have changed so much in my approach, and I continue to evolve. And because I change and I shift in my relationship to conflict and to supposed others, because I've shifted, that means that in the work that I do as as an educator, the work that you do as a parent, whether we're in politics or business, whatever we're doing, we do that differently. So changing adults is, in my view, just as important as raising our children up in new ways. They go hand in hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, then let's talk about training across borders. Let's talk about the 2015 event. Now, tell everybody the actual date.
It will be October 7th to the 11th, Wednesday through Sunday, in Loutraki, Greece. Loutraki is a sport camp, one of the finest sport camps in Greece, and it's about an hour, I understand, outside of Athens. I haven't been there yet. I'll be there in a few weeks. And we are bringing, again, a little bit over 100 people, Aikidoists from over a dozen countries, will be gathering together to train together, to do Aikido together, to do what is really our 10th anniversary. It's only our second one. We did this in 2005. We're doing it again in 2015. But we'll be celebrating the first CAB seminar in Cyprus that we've talked about. We'll be celebrating so many of the things that have grown out of that experience over the last 10 years, which I'm happy to talk about a little bit.
Yes.
And then we hope to be setting the stage for this coming decade and building momentum and expanding this kind of Aikido-based peace-building work as a result of these 5, what are sure to be incredible days together at the conference in 3 weeks.
So let's talk a little bit about what came out of the last tab, the last training across borders, that you guys will be discussing, and then I want to support you in setting the new vision, for the next 10 years by setting intention out of that. Yeah.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I mean, all the power that you have and the spiritual power of intention, and it would be fabulous because we all need that support, and it's just really going to help TAB fly even higher and do more. So thank you for that. Well, as a result, really, of that first TAB seminar, a number of things happened. As I mentioned, we had the first Palestinians were beginning to train at that time. They had judo and karate in Palestine, but they didn't have Aikido. So the original few people who were training have grown to where we have a full-fledged dojo in Ramallah, in a village just outside of Ramallah, which is the capital of the West Bank of Palestine. We have Palestinians training together with Israelis in Jerusalem.
Okay, that's incredible right there.
Yeah, and in fact, we call it a TAB dojo. This dojo has become, the Jerusalem Aikikai has really become a center where everybody is welcome and everybody's training together. And so we have our first generation of first and now even second degree black belts, Palestinians, and they are, of course, becoming teachers as well and training together in an ongoing, not just at a special conference, but on a daily, weekly basis, training together. So that's pretty amazing. We had one young Ethiopian man named Tesbaya who came to Training Across Borders in 2005. I mentioned that Professor Don Levine was an Ethiopian scholar, internationally known, and so he brought Tess, one of his students, to Cyprus. So we had this one guy, and he was a white belt, pretty new in Aikido. He was just fantastic, and he belonged to a youth circus in Ethiopia. They were doing HIV/AIDS education, fighting female genital mutilation, doing all kinds of incredible work through their acrobatics and circus performances, and they have music and art in this campus called the Action for Youth and Community Change. Well, Tess and Don, some others, went back to Ethiopia and began the Peace Dojo in a city called Hawassa, Ethiopia. It's about 6 hours from the capital, from Addis Ababa. So here we are 10 years later, and I was just in Ethiopia to teach last year, very fortunate to do that. Hundreds of kids and young people are training. The dojo is a center part of this this entire sort of campus. And campus is kind of a glorified word. There's all these dimensions are there, but it's not like what we think of as a university campus.
Right,
I
right.
mean, it's just but it's phenomenal. Even in the level of the physical facilities, the level of training and music and education transformation going on in the dojo is a real core part of that. We just conducted our first black belt exams for the first 6 Palestinians black belts. They're all now in their early 20s. 10 years ago, they were kids.
Wow.
And we are still raising funds to bring all of them to Athens in 3 weeks. And there's a plan now that we have put in place to have each one of them spread out through Ethiopia. It's a large country. And to start to spread Aikido, this practice of nonviolent conflict resolution, throughout Ethiopia. So that's really exciting.
Okay, so let me tap on that. Let's tap on a couple of those things because in order for these young adults to expand and begin to teach it throughout Ethiopia, there needs to be funding. Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, and then I'm going to rewind just a bit more. In order for these individuals to come to the TAB conference in Greece, October 7th, there needs to be funding. And that is part of what you guys have been doing and are currently involved in, is raising enough money so that the individuals can get to the conference, so that these intentions can really be seeded, and then to continue to raise money so that when they leave and go back to their homelands, all the different homelands, they can move forward with some financial well-being, some financial support, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's like everything, it takes money. And everything that we do is absolutely grassroots. It's nonprofit. So I appreciate you bringing that up. We had hoped to have about 35 participants from conflict zones come to TAB. And it turns out we've had about 70 or more apply to come.
Wow.
So that's double the number, which is fantastic. I've always called it, in the last month or two, our happy problem, to have so many want to come. And we're talking about from places like Palestine, Jordan, Bulgaria, Algeria. We just have a young man from Kenya now and from Somalia who have applied, and one from Uganda, if we can get all their papers in order. Brazil, I think where else? Turkey and Greece. So we have, a lot of people from different conflict zones who want to come, all Aikido people. Again, it was like double the number we planned on. So we have absolutely been redoubling our efforts while we're still planning the conference to actually have to go out and fundraise some more. And so far we've succeeded to bring about 20 of them. It breaks my heart to think that somebody who wants to come won't be able to just because there isn't enough funding. Of course, there's tuition to the seminar, which is the room, the board, the teachers, the seminar, transportation to and from Athens. And then there's airfare. And, some people are able to contribute something towards that, but it still is, it can run $700, $1,000 a person, depending on their airfares and where they're coming from. And so all of our fundraising is a scholarship fund to provide scholarships for those who require financial assistance. We do have some who don't, and most do. And we have some people coming from North America and Europe who are able to pay their way. But our scholarship funding is really going to bring, hopefully, all of these 70 people. Right now we're, approaching 60, but we still have some more that we're trying to raise money so that they can come. And as you say, funds are needed to continue the work afterwards. There's a lot going on to provide for these programs.
So, Jamie,
continue.
We only have a couple more minutes. Tell everybody the website where our listeners can go and investigate more, and and the place where they could donate if they want to support the scholarships.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. They can go to www.tab2015.org, tab215.org. And that website they can look at some videos, they can see a little bit more about what we're doing and read more. But there's a very clear donate button, and you click on donate, and it takes you over to an online CrowdRise platform. CrowdRise is a site that we've been using to raise funds. We've actually exceeded our $20,000 CrowdRise goal, but we're really the real goal now is about 30 or 35,000.
Oh, I'm going to call it even higher, people, because I said earlier I want to seed the intention for what happens after the conference, and so I call it even higher than that. So if you're listening to this program and you are inspired by it, which I really think you should be inspired by it, go to tab2015.org and make a donation so that the people that have already committed, which we have heard is the way of Aikido, have already committed to be the peace brokers, the bridges in this world. They can go to this conference, get sourced, get information, and take it back to their homeland and really instill it. So, Jamie, I thank you so much for the work you've been doing in the world and sharing it with me today, and also for all of the inspiration that you bring. I thank you so much. So I'm just going to finish with, and so it is, namaste.